Good afternoon, welcome along to this meeting of the Community Wellbeing and Regulatory Committee. Welcome to those who've joined us on the live stream. Thank you for those in attendance. We have Pania joining us via Zoom. Welcome along, Pania. Thank you. I know you can't stay for the whole meeting depending on how long we go, but appreciate the time you've given us. We have apologies from Councillor Kett and Reverend Cook. Would simply like to move that they're accepted.
Move those.
Leslie Barry, put that all in favour.
Aye. Aye.
Against? Carried. Any declarations of interest? No items in public forum. So we'll move on to the minutes of the Southern Regional Heritage Committee from October 25th. And Barry's moved that, I'll second those. Questions or comments? Put the motion, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Minutes from the Community Wellbeing and Regulatory Committee meeting from November 12th.
I'll move those.
Thank you. And seconded Councillor Crackett. Questions or comments?
Yeah,
Grant?
just one on page 4.
Can you pull the mic in, mate?
Oh, sorry. On page 4 of the report, and it's paragraph 3. Just a query was raised around the reports not leaving any desire to revocate the land and the wider need of community for aged care. It was confirmed that the management plan did not, but it did not preclude that. That doesn't make sense to me. So I'm just wondering what if we've captured that accurately. That's the only thing. Might be for the minute people to review and just see whether they've got it right.
To be frank, some of that can relate around how people ask questions. So that was the query.
Yeah.
I think probably we're just changing leaving to having, maybe.
Yeah. Just
Cool.
up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, with that change,
Yeah.
mover and seconder comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay, any other points through the minutes? Cool, in that case I'll put the motion, all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Councillor Boyle, the minutes of the Community Wellbeing Fund Appointments Committee, November 13.
Yes, could I move that, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Mayor Clark.
Yeah, I just have an update on the issue around the support for the Queenstown.
Sorry,
Waitaki-
this is not
Oh, the
that.
next one,
This is
sorry.
the
Oh,
Wellbeing
that's
Fund
tomorrow
one.
one,
Yeah.
isn't it?
I'll come back to you in PX as you discussed earlier.
Thank you.
So on the Wellbeing Fund Appointments Committee, nothing? Put that then, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. With the minutes of the Creative Communities Scheme Invercargill Fund Appointments Committee. It's nice to have the chair, former chair present.
I'll move those.
Councillor Boyle, you're moving. I'll second pro forma. Any questions or comments? Put that then, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. The meeting from November 21st. Trish, you moving
Yes,
that
I'll
again?
move that.
I'll second. Questions or comments from that? Put it then, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Community Wellbeing Fund, November 28.
Yes, I'll move that.
I can second, yeah.
Yep. Any questions or comments from the committee members? No. I'll put the motion, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Extraordinary meeting of the Community Wellbeing Fund, December 3.
I'll move that.
Trish and Alex. It's good to see it served, swapping around the various members on that committee. Questions? Put it then, all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. We've got the October meetings of the District Licensing Committee and the November minutes. I'll move them both taken together.
Second. Vote for appointment.
And any questions or comments? Cool, put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against? carried. Brings us to tab 13, which is the notice of motion. As the mover of the notice of motion, or proposer, Robert, Councillor Pottinger.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to speak briefly and obviously leave it open for discussion and then reserve the right to speak at the end. This council has granted consent to PowerNet to install a row of 21 metre tall 66 kV power pylons and transmission lines along Finley Road. According to the ICC District Plan, Finley Road down to Bethune's Lane is zoned Residential 1, and there are 6 pylons that will be located in this Residential 1 zoning. The consent that Council granted was given without any requirement for general notification or limited notification. For this non-notification to occur, it means that Council assessed that the effects of these 6 21 metre pylons and transmission lines were less than minor. In granting the consent and its conditions, Council would have followed the issues, objectives and policies of our current district plan. I believe the district plan has failed to protect the amenity rights of the residents, of the Residential 1 residents in Finley Road, and should be reviewed to better protect all residents living in Residential 1 from such behemoth structures being allowed in their urban environment. As an alternative, the 66 kV cables could be run underground using modern engineering methodology. This has been clearly demonstrated this year in Christchurch with Orion undergrounding 7.5 kilometres of 66 kV lines between 2 of their substations. It is more expensive, but it protects amenity values and gives major long-term maintenance benefits. So if the Residential 1 area of Finley Road had been done underground, then it would have made sense to continue because the cable links can be purchased up to continuous links, I think up to 2K, and carried on around down Mill Road before emerging. So that's all I need to say right now, and I'll hand it back to the Chair.
Thank you. So, first of all, a question of clarification. Your notice of motion has no intention of trying to overturn that decision?
No, it's not. What the notice of motion is trying to achieve is obviously Council followed the rules that were within the plan, and I'm not a RMA lawyer, but obviously the plan, in my view, as I've stated, failed, had the provisions to protect Residential 1 residents. And there could be one pop up in my street next week.
So, as somebody who is involved in RMA issues and was involved with the construction of the current district plan, have you, in your consideration of the notice of motion, given any thought to the national policy statement, which sits 2 stages above the district plan, and which the district plan is required to give effect to?
Right, but I've also, what I've given effect to is the amenity...
No, sorry, that's a yes or no.
Yes, I have given consideration to
Okay,
that.
please carry on then.
Now, the consideration, more important consideration, was given to the amenity values, especially the aesthetic coherence that is required. So, I'm purely asking for this council to consider, is this the norm we expect for Residential 1, that it's allowed to happen? Now, this could be Martin Street, it could be Anglam Street, it could be Albert Street. Any of those streets, if you apply the MPS thing, boom, non-notified, 21 metre pylon in your street.
Yes and no. So first of all, the national policy statement doesn't apply a great deal of effect from memory to amenity value. But it is, from memory again, practical in how it interprets the engineering possibility. And so to put a large pylon on Albert Street would obviously be more challenging. So I understand the intent. I'm struggling to understand how, given that it's a notice of motion and we don't get to alter the words.
Well, let's put it a bit clearer, is that the activity required PowerNet to get a consent.
Yes.
Okay, and that's why, and then starting that chain of events, that's where I'm wondering where our district plan couldn't protect these residents.
So again, I'll come back to hierarchy. A captain doesn't tell a general what to do.
No, I'm just asking a simple question.
Yep, and that would be my response. And I know that that's awkward, but there are some things that, and I don't even think the regional policy statement has any input on it, because it's set in at a national level, and the same for the rest of the country, and the district plans give effect to them as best they can. That's the hierarchy issue. Anyway, Tom.
Chair, I support the point that Councillor Pottinger's making. The decision to allow overgrounding on Finlay Road was at the discretion of council officers, but I think you would have to say that with a bit of hindsight it may not have been the best decision. It could have been required to have been undergrounded according to district plan. We could have required him to underground it only on Finlay Road. As soon as it leaves Finlay Road, then we had no power to do so, but we could have on Finlay Road. And I guess it came down to judgment about whether those towers were likely to cause, significant impact on residents. Matter of judgment, but I would be inclined to come down in the side that I guess Councillor Pottinger's arguing that maybe it was not the best decision. But it already is. The powers are already there in the district plan. I don't know you need to change the district plan. It's a matter of judgment. And it's probably specifically those high towers, because about a third of the city is overgrounded already. We're still overgrounded in about 1/3 of the city. 1/3 of the city has poles rather than underground.
Not 21 metre 66 kV.
No, I know that's what I'm saying. It's a matter of judgment there, it's a matter of deciding about what the height is and what the impact is. But anyway, overall I would support the Councillor Pottinger has said.
Ria.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I also support Councillor Pottinger's notice of motion, and I just want to remind the Council that when we had the residents visit us and state their case to us, they were asking us for help given the situation that they were facing, and we all received the handout. I'm just looking at that now, and it was quite succinct in what the consent related to for their properties. It talks about the poles, 180 poles are to be erected. It talks about the lack of non-consultation. If there was consultation, it was with the weakest residents there that couldn't debate back with them. And it raises some serious questions about why the consent was granted to be above ground on Finlay Road. So I do also have grave concerns about what those residents particularly are facing, especially with their housing valuations determined to go down.
So we're not discussing that issue specifically, or we're litigating. It's about how the district plan is interpreted.
That commentary that they brought to us, I think, is still quite relative to how that consent was placed in the first place. Although I know that we can't seem to be doing anything to overturn that decision, because under the Electricity Act 1992, ICC can't stop them. But I'm in favour of having a look at how we can protect residents of residential 1 areas in the future.
Councillor Boyle.
I wish to support what what Tom has said. I agree that it was a bad decision that it happened, or judgment or whatever. You do not need to review the district plan to make sure that this doesn't happen again. The National Policy Statement is quite clear about what we do, and the district plan sits beside that. It's about what happens underneath that.
So can I correct you, councillor, the national policy statement doesn't sit beside it.
No, I meant above it, I say beside it, sorry, I meant above it, yeah. Thank you. So it's just my thoughts.
So, bearing in mind you've gone through the RMA training, how do you believe that should have been interpreted then?
It should have been discussed, well, I think a better decision could have been made, and I agree with what Tom has said about Finley Road, is that the poles could have been asked to be underground for there.
I think it should have gone to a hearing.
But the decision's been made, and we can't change that.
So what I'm trying to understand, and obviously we'll come back to councillor Pottinger for his comment before you vote yes or no on the notice of motion, because that's all you can do,
No, yeah.
is what's the measure? How do we know that the notice of motion achieves? I understand the intent, but how do we measure that success or achievement?
Yeah.
I
Grant?
don't think we can, yeah.
Yeah, so to that question, I agree with what's been said around the process has probably been somewhat flawed with hindsight, and it is unfortunate, the outcome. When is the next review of that district plan occurring, and its normal cycle?
Well, it used to be a, forgive the phrase, god-awful 5 to 6 year project where the whole thing was done, but it's able to be taken and reviewed piece by piece. Jonathan, do you have any comment on what the timetable is for review of different parts of the district plan?
Not a specific comment in regard to the timing. We have scoped some work that we're putting forward next year in regard to housing. There is the potential to adjust the scope somewhat to take into account other areas. It's council's prerogative.
Sorry, there's some noisy people in the kitchen out the back. It's a little distracting.
Yeah, so that taken into consideration, I'd be supportive around it rolling into a review that's calendared, if you like. So you might capture or expand the scope, as Jonathan's just said, so that you capture this for review to see how it can be avoided, as opposed to, do a review, trigger a review now, and then, we've got a review coming up in a short while that we can expand the scope is probably, instead of trying to create extra work for us.
So I'm looking at the notice of motion and trying to figure out how to interpret it, and this is a rolling thing for me, so forgive me if I go on a little. If in amongst the reviews that are going on around housing, which deals with residential values, residential classifications and density, the amenity issues can be raised during that, and this becomes part of an overall consideration. It becomes part of something that is thought about. That's just kind of where I'm at the moment. Michael.
Thank you. Through yourself, Chair. Just the way the notice of motion is currently worded, in relation to that review, there may be a financial implication in relation to it. It's a formal request to review the district plan, and in line with, it's only that first sentence in relation to what the actual request is about. I would highlight that will change the current work plan associated to our review, so we'd need to take it away if council decide that they wish to go down that front, or the committee, sorry.
Okay, and I'll come to you in just a second, Grant. Councillors, this and Alex, this is one of the pitfalls of pulling the notice of motion trigger. So the notice of motion that comes forward, as we found out with the last one, it's a yes or a no based on how things are worded, and that does complicate things. So I've got Grant, Alex and Leslie. Grant.
Yeah, so it's probably just a question to Councillor Pottinger as the proposer around the expectation he has, or you have, of the time frame for this review.
Okay, no, thanks for that.
Thanks for the ability to sort of straighten this out. And I didn't go for over detail, but effectively when I asked for the trigger to be pulled on a review, it could be reworded, which I am allowed to do, to fit in with the timetable of the stuff. Yeah, so
Thank you.
that answers Michael's question. That it fits
Sorry,
in.
no, you're not allowed to do.
Notice of motion can't.
Notice of
Oh, I
motion
can't
is-
change it. Okay. Well, it's a pretty open-ended notice of motion there, so there is no time frame on it. So we can let that one float. Okay, so can I ask a secondary question then? So if well, where are the yes and no? So no, that's fine.
Alex?
I just wanted to raise something because the words had been raised, and I'm looking probably more towards you, Darren, or those that are very well versed in the RMA. I'll pose it as a question because I think it's really important that the listeners and the people here today, have a bit more of an understanding. The economic impact on both the entity applying and the residential or the properties involved, that can't be taken into account when it comes to RMA consenting. Is that correct?
Mostly, but not entirely. But to the majority of your point, it can't be. It's not a major consideration.
It's not something that you can actually, you're really meant to think about when it comes to assessing RMA applications. So although, it's unfortunately a really horrible factor when it comes to the reality of the situation of what occurs, you can't actually take the economic impact on either party into effect when assessing the validity of the application.
Correct.
Thank you.
That's a good point. Thanks for raising that. Leslie?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was just going to point out that the notice of motion is so specific in requiring a formal review on one topic, and you can't reword a notice of motion. So what we seem to be discussing is that it would be sensible to look at the intent of this notice of motion on amenity values as part of an upcoming review that is already planned. But it would be awkward to create a yes vote on this notice of motion and another review that was as specific as this one when we know that we already have a review planned. So it seems to me, unfortunately, that, well, where I'm sitting is that it would be sensible to roll this into an upcoming review that we know is already happening, but it would be difficult to agree to it as a totally separate process. And we can't reword it, so we're not going to be able to reword it to say, let's roll this into the next review that's planned, but we could get to the point where it is understood that that is what is going to happen.
Mayor Clark?
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things.
Sorry, could you speak up?
If we can't take economic impacts under the RMA as a point of consideration, does that mean there's no appeal rights against the consent that was issued?
Jonathan?
So the appeal rights only go to parties to the application. There's the appeal right on judicial review, but that would be on a point of process as opposed to the actual outcome.
I think a layperson would say that if you're putting a power pole of 21 metres high outside my section, that while I might not be a party to it, I am affected by it. So I don't agree with the notice of motion, and the rationale is not because I don't agree with what Rangi's raising, because I think it's an important issue that he raises, but the issue or the problem that seems to be is not the district plan, it's the application of the provisions by our staff that's been the problem. The argument could have been made that putting a 21 metre tall pile on outside a residential property is something that we should go to the community about. And now I understand the impacts of the Electricity Act and how that kicks in once we get down the Mill Road, but Finlay Road is covered by the district plan and residential one. And so if we are going to stop this happening in the future, given that we don't have any appeal rights on this one, then one would consider how do we change our internal policies to make sure as Rangi quite rightly says, these things don't pop up all over the place, as just being the most convenient and cheapest option for the electricity authorities.
Tom?
Well, look, I think to a large extent, having this discussion, having raised the question and having had this discussion, largely satisfies the issue, because the issue really was one about judgment rather than the nature of the... And you could not have in a district plan that it was obligatory in every situation, because sometimes you just cannot underground. You cannot underground in parts of Bluff because it's made of rock. You cannot underground in Bond Street because you don't want it to flood. So you would never have it that there's a 100% requirement to underground. There's going to be judgment. I think, discussing the nature of that judgment has probably been useful and might be able to fix the problem. I think if you went back to look at the wording of the district plan, it'd be difficult to tighten it up without actually removing the discretion that is required in some situations.
Any further speakers before I go back to Councillor Poppinger? Rangi?
Right, thanks, Chair. A couple of things. The wording. I wish to formally request. So I wrote that because when I sent it to Michael, I just didn't want to be, "Hi, Michael, how's it going today?" Blah blah blah. This is serious shit. Yeah. Sorry, excuse my language there. This is serious. And if you notice that I request that the council review its district plan. So I'm not asking. It's not a formal review. I'm just asking that it reviews. Okay, and that can slot in anywhere. So there is no specifications applied to the review. So there's a bit of history to this. So over a month ago, I actually did challenge the consent application, and under the Resource Management Act, Section 128, you can challenge on the grounds of inaccuracies within the consent. And the consent that came in dismissed the ability or worthiness of undergrounding. And that's what really got my back up a bit. In the consent, they applied for their poles, but at the same time, they downplayed that undergrounding would be problematic and everything. And this is where I got involved with Orion, and they've been incredibly helpful, and basically said, look, we underground to make them more reliable, and they were even supplied the schematics of cross sections of all the work they've done. And so I was disappointed that undergrounding was dismissed, and I challenged. My challenge was that this may have influenced staff in their decision. If they read something that says undergrounding's not the way to go, then what are the staff going to do? Do they have to go get a technical review or something like this? So I challenged that, and I got a reply a week ago saying, no, we've looked at it, tough luck. There are no inaccuracies, so Section 128 doesn't apply, because Section 132 does allow the application to be dismissed, stopped. So anyway, with that path blocked, I've come to this council now basically challenging our plan, because obviously council staff work to our plan and there's something wrong in it. I don't know what it is because I don't have the expertise, but I don't want this to happen again to any residential property owner in Invercargill. So that's me done. So that's where I'm coming from. So getting back to it, the review, there's nothing specific about the review time-wise. Okay, just whenever it's happening, review it. And the reason again, I believe there's not the protection. You talk about the national policy statement, but there's got to be protection to stop a 21 metre pole being put outside your house. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So the notice of motion is specific, as is the vote. It's either yes or no.
I need a seconder, sorry.
Councillor Bond, thank you. I go back to the point that Councillor Soper made, that whether the notice of motion stands or falls, I think the intent has been gathered, and during the review of the district plan, there would be the opportunity to review how amenity values are considered and protected within the bounds of what it is that are required from compliance to regional and national policy statements. And in saying that, it's not like I don't have empathy for the situation that the residents who came and sat in front of us found themselves in. I don't think anybody would enjoy having a large edifice like that outside their house. I'm just unaware at the moment off the top of my head how far down Finley Road it was, but
It's to Bethune's Lane. That's where our residential one
Yeah.
runs out.
so just in casual observation, there was a very large substation in that area.
That still doesn't mean anything. It's residential one.
I'm just making an observation.
No. Observation noted, but it's residential one in our district plan. Both sides of the road.
So I'll call for a division under the vote. Those that would like to support the notice of motion, if you could raise your hand, please. The notice of motion is carried.
Thank you, Chair.
And we will come back with a timeline and how that could be considered for the committee to, and that's where we can get some wriggle room and clarification.
Could we have the votes recorded, please?
Sorry,
Could we have the votes recorded?
I did call for division.
Yeah.
Yep. So we did catch that. I think we did.
Yes, you did.
In that case, record my no vote, please.
And no.
And mine. Thank you. Right, that brings us to the city centre activation plan. Karen, welcome along. This is an update on where you've been, where you're at and where you're going. Thank you for that. Rex, you want to lead off?
Oh, just in Jason's absence, just introduce the report and introduce Karen from Great South to basically answer any questions. I think the report's pretty well covers off the purpose, and leave it over to Karen to lead us into the conversation.
Thanks, Karen. And noticeably, we obviously have seen a lot of activation in the CBD. Now it's also a lot easier given that the construction work, construction work is mostly finished, apart from some sewers being replaced and what have you. And the occasional rally course that gets set up, but that's another matter. I think actually there's an idea. No. You've had a chance to read through the report. Is there anything you'd like to highlight, Karen, before I throw it open for questions?
Just that I guess the plan is the plan, but we remain open for change. So little things like you will have noticed at the weekend, there was the market on S Street that technically wasn't planned for. We were going to do an Advent retail promotion, but it was agreed within the city centre steering group that this year wasn't a good year to introduce such a concept, so we just quickly pivoted and threw the market together basically. So we'll just continue to move and change where required at late notice.
When the activations come up, how are they received by retailers?
We're finding engagement is increasing. It's increasing, but that also means we need to get out there a little bit more as well to drive that opportunity for participation.
As a comment, as a business resident in the CBD, we are well updated with what's going on, so that's really good.
Thank you.
Good to be aware, and that gives all businesses the chance to, I'm going to use the word pivot, and react to what's coming up and use them as opportunities to leverage off, which is half the reason why we support it. Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Karen, great to see all the events that have been held along Esk and Don Street. Just wondering, has there been feedback that there's a preference for events to be held more so on Esk Street, given there's a built stage there and areas that public could interact with that isn't on Don Street?
The only voice that we've heard is from this room in relation to Esk and Don. We just keep flipping it. Esk is obviously one lane versus Don being two lane, which gives us a little bit more safety aspect, particularly when it comes to pack in and pack out, because we kind of can't stop the public coming in when we're bringing in food trucks, etc. But in saying that, the Esk Street food event worked really well, but our next one is on Don, and we'll just look to keep it fresh, and maybe some of the events that are on Esk could be on Don for a different feeling the following year. Maybe.
Grant?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Re-emphasise what Rhea said around it. It's really great to see those activations, and the ones I've attended are just really cool for our city. I think they bring a lot of goodness to the city. Just wondering, do these events align with other sort of wider strategies, tourist strategies? And I know probably don't see the date down for Burt Munro linking to us inner city activation, whether it's been given consideration as an example, but my question is, how connected up is our inner city strategy to our wider sort of tourism, people in the city, people in the province strategy?
Yeah, so we are looking at some of those opportunities. I guess for us is that we're trying to look to bring that foot traffic in. So when we know the foot traffic will be there, so for example, the Burt Munro, they're there and they're engaging anyway. A little bit more bringing them into the retail could be beneficial. But while we build the activation program, we're really just not clawing at it, but it's a hard job to sort of curate the event. So for now, we're not leaning in. With some, like Waitangi, we're looking at a Valentine's Day thing for our retailers this year. But yeah, where possible, we're trying to create new opportunities for new people to be in the CBD.
Yeah, but it's so, like, if there's events happening at Riverton or Hokanui, Gore, Winton, are we looking to pull that? I'm thinking, rural communities have some big events happening.
Yeah,
Show,
definitely,
for
like
example,
Waimumu and
people
stuff.
travel down. Can we drag them in, those sorts of things? Are we connecting up with that wider to try and leverage off existing?
I can answer that, Grant, because ultimately that sits with the event organisers, and you get, I'll say the stuff that Karen can't. when you've got Burt Munro on at the same time as Waimumu, you've got accommodation and food retailers maxed out, and that sometimes is beyond our control.
Yeah,
Because we've got that 2-month window at the start of the year when everybody wants to do something.
Yeah.
But overall, I guess one of the benefits of Great South's regional awareness is that they are able to make people aware of what else is going on. And I'm guessing, Karen, that's what you do when people come to you for support.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a few things in here like the summer holiday activity guide. So that's really looking at that wider CBD and engagement that children can have, while also looking at the wider activities or events that people can do. And we've done the same, which isn't in here, but the festive calendar, so pulling together all the festive activities that are happening, and that's sort of trying to draw into some of that. So not our focus, but definitely an awareness in the conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got Steve, Alex, Trish, then Mayor Clark. Steve.
Yeah, thanks for this. I love the activations in the city and reading through what's been happening, but also what is coming up. I was in Christchurch at the Crossing over the weekend and loved the part that music has in their activations. I just wondered, with buskers on Esk, which I thought was a awesome initiative, whether it had been successful in the goal of getting buskers and musicians to sign up to be a part of a program moving forward.
Not so much. It's our second try at it. We're going to move it into May New Zealand Music Month and try and pull that up as our next goal. And that's where I say we just keep pivoting. Yeah. So we're going to do that this May.
Great.
and try that, because it hasn't quite worked how we had anticipated.
Okay.
That's good though.
Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to provide a bit of context, because it seems like every time that there's an event being held in John Street, it gets raised, why aren't we having it in Esk Street? And so the role that has, it's rated for by all of that inner city CBD area. So it's about sharing the love for all of the retailers that felt the pain through the CBD redevelopment, not just benefiting the retailers in Esk Street. So Karen's quite right. We did give the directive at the start when this role was established that this is rated for by that whole CBD base. So it is to benefit that whole CBD base and not just that select few. So I just really wanted to clarify that, because it seems like every time, we get a road closure request or something like that, it's thrown around, why isn't this in Esk Street? And yes, you're right, the staging is there for, your buskers and your events like that, but it is so that everybody else in the peripheral can get some benefit at the same time.
Playing the devil's advocate though, if you take the number of retailers in Esk versus the number in D, it's not an equal application, is it?
No, exactly.
Not necessarily, but it is right in the middle of that CBD area as well. So you do have a lot of retailers and food outlets on the likes of Space Street that might get a bit of flow-on effect with it being in the middle rather than it being right at that left end of town. True. So it is about making sure that wider ripple effect occurs, not right just concentrated in that very quintessential heart of the city.
And it's really interesting, so the night food market for Esk on Eats benefited more from it being on Don than on Esk, which is weird. So we'll see if that does that again, but that's random.
Trish?
Mine's on Esk and Don Street too. What is the cost? I mean, we've set up Esk Street with barriers, and the traffic management cost to open Don Street must be quite a bit more to manage it, is it?
Yeah, so it's about an extra 2,000 to 2,500, depending on the length of time we need to close Don over and above what it is to close Esk. So
And
it's
I
cheaper
do-
to close Esk.
And at a recent funding application, we had people tell us that the activation in Esk Street really helped people in the mall subsequent as well. So I just think my preference, if you quite consider it, is I think we should try and really emphasise the Esk Street. But that's just, thank you. You're doing great work.
Mayor Clark?
Yeah, just reiterating some of that stuff. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to get control of the traffic control component, which is somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 per event. Whether we can train up some of our city council staff members who might be a cheap option. Yeah, I know. Look, my view is that I think that I've been to most of the events. I think the ones in Esk Street are have a greater turnout, or if the weather's really inclement, you can do something in Esk Street and people drop into the mall, which is what happened on the last one, when it was, no, the one before that, when it was freezing cold. If you're in Don Street, you're sort of trapped away from any shelter. Just a couple of other things. I agree with Grant around the Burt Munro. I think if we had a weekend that dovetailed in with that, on that weekend, even though it's a busy weekend, I think that would be a positive thing. People would go away and sell that. The other thing is that next Christmas, we have decided as a council that we won't have any more Christmas lights, and that we would, because they're getting too costly, and that we might go to a model of encouraging the retailers to do up their shops. So as we get closer to Christmas next year, we could have an event maybe in both streets where people could judge those retail shops, and you might get a piece of paper that you can put into a box somewhere that says what are the top three, and then later after the weekend we have some prizes that we give out to the shops that have done the best. So create a bit of an activity of coming in and having a look what the shops are doing. So that could be just something for 12 months from now.
Yeah,
But
and we were aware that had been raised, and we've pushed that with the retailers this year on upping their retail decoration
But
on the back.
I think that if we're going to do that next year, if we get people to walk around that block of Don, D, Esk and Kelvin, looking at the shops and then making their judgment calls, that's best free advertising you could ever get. And while they're there, some people will duck into those shops and so just a good thing. But otherwise, it's a good thing when you think we started out a couple of years ago with little or nothing. So you get a lot of good feedback.
Any other questions or comments? If not, thank you, Karen, for taking the time to come along and speak to the committee. I would simply like to move the recommendation that we receive the report. Grant and Alex, put that all in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thanks. Thanks, Karen.
Good job. That's good.
Thank you.
Which brings us to the Youth Council's end of year report. For the last time, Liam and Saranya, welcome along.
Thank you for having us. Good afternoon, Mayor Clark, councillors and council staff. As the Chair said, my name is Liam Calder and I am the 2024 Chair of the Invercargill City Youth Council.
Hello everyone, my name is Saranya. I'm a first year youth councillor and we had a great year in youth council this year and today we had the opportunity to share with you all.
So let me paint a picture for you guys on what the 26th year of the Invercargill City Youth Council looked like. We started off our year with 23 youth councillors, 6 of whom were returning from the previous year. This year was different as we trialled fortnightly meetings to experience new learning opportunities with formal and informal meetings. I feel that having quite a fresh youth council, it took some time for some of the younger members to grow and build their confidence and make their voices heard, but in the end we had a fully thriving youth council. Some personal highlights for me was earlier in the year we had our summer committee hold events in the first few months. So we planned the orientation day for the youth councillors and hosted the umbrella market on the 10th of February in the Scottish Hall. Even though the weather didn't play ball that day, we had a really healthy turnout and great to see some of the councillors there. Thank you for turning up, with over 30 vendors and lots of smiles throughout the day. And this was a great lead into our big prize project for the year, which was the block takeover held in May. This gave an opportunity for young people in Invercargill to engage with activities and organisations, along with workshops, and the free kai was a huge hit. Just like the umbrella market, the weather didn't play ball, but it didn't put a dampener on the day. With all our involvement in the community this year, we also did some volunteering throughout the year, including disassembling beads and fastenings that can be used by CanBee to create jewellery making kits for their clients. The Youth Council set its sights on a different trajectory for its committees this year by interacting with the public on these and doing some engagement focused on rangatahi aged between 12 to 24. Which gave a different direction for the topics of our committees this year. I believe that these committees gave the youth councillors a sense of responsibility and leadership within their smaller cohorts, developing their skills and future endeavours, but also giving them a working together project to end up with a project. So what was your favourite committee, Saranya?
Thank you for asking, Liam. My favourite committee this year was the Cultural Activities Committee, where we worked on 2 Welcoming Week projects. The biggest one was our Welcoming Week cookbook, where we gathered recipes from people of different backgrounds across Invercargill. It was a great project to work on, and we had a lot of community support, and were also interviewed by the V magazine. We feel that the cookbook helped to show the diversity of our city, and it's also available on the ICYC Let's Talk webpage if anyone is interested in checking it out. Another one of my favorite moments of the year was the Anzac Day dawn service. I had never been to a dawn service before, and hence it was my first time at the ceremony. It was fun to attend this with other youth councillors and be a part of the community and the civic festivities of the day. There were many highlights throughout the year because Youth Council held many civic learning and engagements this year. And I really enjoyed the Parks workshop, where we had the park staff come in and ask us about our ideas for the Donovan Park and Sandy Point. And it was valuable sharing ideas with other youth councillors and communicating And it was, in general, a great bonding experience for the year. We grew in confidence and also started good discussions with each other that day. And speaking of engagement, the end of year evaluations showed us that most youth councillors really enjoyed the Titiriti training workshops that Pania Koot ran. These trainings covered the past and the future and the importance of the role Titiriti plays in Murihiku, and everyone came away with new knowledge.
And for 2024, and as the chair says, this is our picture, and we're happy to take some questions from the councillors.
Thank you. So, Saranya, a question for you first of all. How has this first year of participation in the Youth Council changed your perspective of the community?
Well, I've learned a lot of things at my time in Youth Council this year, and just like helping out with community events like the Block Takeover and our pom-pom survey at the mall for our committees, just really helped me interact with the community and like just create a bonding with more people, and in general just increase the awareness of Youth Council in the public.
Sounds really positive, thank you. Liam, how long were you involved in Youth Council?
I've been on the Youth Council since 2021.
And how's it changed your life?
Good question. When I first came to Youth Council, the chambers was in the building on Esk Street, and I used to sit at one of these end tables for at least a few months and not say anything. But the growth and knowledge that we had from especially council staff coming in to share, because information on Let's Talk when you're younger is quite daunting and you're not really sure what a lot of these words and terminology means. So especially council staff coming in and breaking them down is really helpful, and that's what I found really helped me grow my voice. And I hope that other youth councillors found that too. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you, Liam. Mayor Clark.
Yep. So a couple of things for me, Liam. I've already mentioned this, but for the record, we have the Kumagaya delegation, sister city delegation here on the 3rd through the 6th of February. So you'd be more than welcome to be part of that and to bring along one or more of your colleagues. Series of events. We'll go to Ocean Beach and look at aquaculture, look at space ops. There'll be an event at the Marae and probably out to a dairy farm as well. So I've met Liam quite a few times over the year, and one thing that I have learned is whenever there's a photo shot is to get a chair and stand on it beside him so that I don't feel small.
Good things come in small packages.
Hey, Saranya. Trish, speaking of small packages.
I'd just like to, another small package. I'd just like to acknowledge the work that Liam's done for the Youth Council and for people in Invercargill. When we interviewed people recently for the Creative Communities and for the Wellbeing Fund, 4 or 5 of those were from the Youth Council. And I'm not sure whether Liam sort of was standing behind them pushing them, but they all had confidence and were an absolute credit to our community. So Liam, thank you for what you've done. And then, of course, your work in chairing the Creative Communities, I'd just like to say in this forum, what a wonderful job you've done. You understand chairmanship and you make sure people get a chance to speak, and the skills you've learned and shown there are just outstanding, so well done.
Thank you very much. I've learnt from the best.
Thank you. Trish. Just to clarify. Although, following on from that, with Liam chairing Creative Communities Funding Committee, he has no hesitation in pulling certain councillors into line when he's requiring order, which was impressive. Brave, but impressive. Grant.
Yeah, thanks Liam for your work. Just thinking about some of the activities, firstly I think it's great that you've had the staff come through and really dig deep into sort of health council's work, because it is important for young people. Any consideration given to some of the committees and public engagement around young entrepreneurs? I see the young kids from Aparima just won a really big award, Caleb Bros and Co. So, in connecting some of that back into council, because I think economic development is a critical part of how we work with, how we work with stakeholders and that sort of thing. So what's your thoughts on that?
I definitely think that is a place to grow on, but as this year's Youth Council has come to an end, that's something that the next year's Youth Council could decide on or choose to bring up and carry on with.
Sort of reflecting on your last, your experience, do you think that would add value, or as an opportunity that needs to be explored further by Youth Council in the future?
I think there could be ties to relate it back to council, especially how it creates its revenue. And as I said, it's more for Youth Council to decide for next year, but I think it does have its merits to bring in.
Cool.
I think one of the challenges the Youth Council faced, and both Councillor Crackett and Councillor Board can chip in, is that there was a significant turnover.
Yeah.
So we went from a very strong and vocal Youth Council that we'd been dealing with over the previous couple of years to the majority of Youth Council this year are first-timers. And if you cast your mind back to your first time sitting at the table, it's daunting, let alone if you're somewhere between 13 and 17. And so first of all, it's really brave that they do that, but they found their feet really well and allowed themselves to make their own shape. And each Youth Council will continue to do that. So a lot of what they engage in depends on how they measure their capacity, and that's really positive.
Yeah, I just think, I see young people can contribute a massive amount, particularly economically, and, the way they look at our problems into the future, I think, it'd be great to capture that through some way, shape or form, but it's...
Alex and Steve?
Just a quick question, and thank you so much to both you two, and then the wider Youth Council. Your incredible contribution has been really noted, and we're really, really lucky to have you. My question is for you, Liam. Based on your previous years in Youth Council and the different format for this Youth Council and the informal meetings and stuff, and it seems to be quite a significant amount of activity, can you reflect for me how you found that format? Did you think that is a better format to go with into the future?
I found it really positive. We didn't have our formal meetings in the chamber, so I think it's mentioned in the reports. We had it upstairs in the meeting room at the library, and that's where we'd have our minutes and all the formalities as you do at a council meeting. But with our informal meetings, we were able to focus on our committees in the later half in the year, or do some volunteering like I mentioned for Canbead. But still, I think it was positive and negative. It has its positives and what's the word I'm looking for? And breaking down the barriers, especially earlier in the year, and its negatives, it can be quite daunting at the start of the year for the youth councillors in a formal setting. But future for next year's youth council, I'm not quite sure what they're doing, but that's for the coordinators to decide.
Thanks.
Steve?
Awesome, thanks, Chair. Great job today. I just think what you guys are doing is amazing, and I've thoroughly enjoyed working with you this year, and just watching you do some really great things for our rangatahi in Invercargill. Just out of interest, I guess Darren pointed to it before, and it might be more of a question for Danielle, but I just wanted, from the 21 members this year and those that are still eligible or still down south, is there a good contingent reapplying for next year?
I've been on the appointment committee for next year. We have really, really high numbers next year, which is fantastic. Awesome. So we've already had our interviewing process and our selection process, and the leaders will be going out to the successful applicants very shortly. Rollover, I think it's close to about 9 or 10, but I could be wrong on that.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
And just how's the spread across the schools across the city as well?
It depends on applying. I remember my first year in youth council, we had one whole side was Verdon Green Blazers, and then the next year it was Girls High. It really depends, and it's same with gender and age. But it's good we have representation from Bluff and from Notting School, which is fantastic.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I guess one of the things that's really impressed me in coming back, because thank you for mentioning that it's been 26 years. Because I was here at the first one.
You would have been one of youth councillors.
Were you a youth councillor then?
No, not. I was well into my 30s, but I was the youngest. I was the youngest councillor, which was shameful. What was my point? Oh yes, the one thing that has really impressed me over the last couple of years since I've been able to more fully re-engage is the diversity of the membership in many ways. But I think the point that Steve was hinting at was we just need to make sure that all parts of the city are covered as well. But I think in the last couple of years, the diversity at the Youth Council table has been exceptional, and I really feel very proud of how I get to talk about you and what you achieve to members of the public, to people from other councils, Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, which I sit on the leadership group for. They have a very strong interest in making sure that young people become involved in civics, and the fact that you've dedicated all this time for what is a pretty heavy meeting schedule. And I think from memory we only had a couple of fall off attrition wise this year, which, bearing in mind looking at the blazes of the students who make up the Youth Council, they're involved in a lot of stuff. So it's a real commitment, and I hope you've had as much from it and continue to as we get from hearing your voice.
You've got some great leadership coming through, and I really hope that everyone can, in Invercargill, at least gives it a go, because it's such a great learning curve.
Thank you. Councillors, any further questions? Sorry, Steve?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to move the two recommendations.
I'll second.
Thanks, Alex. Questions or comments? I'll put that. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great job.
Thank you. Have a good holiday.
Proposal to revoke reserve status, Aotearoa Bay Road reserves, and purchase for the purpose of disposal. Cassie and Chris, welcome.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, that's going to be a hard act to follow.
Yeah, no pressure. Just acknowledging the fact of how the Youth Council reflected on their engagement with parks as well. So well done.
Thanks. Okay, so the proposal to revoke reserve status for Aotearoa Bay Road reserves. We had there's 4 parcels of land under that name. They went to council in February 2024. They've all been through the consultation process. Lots 9 and 20, which you'll see on the second page of the report, are shown. They're already been approved by the Minister of Conservation. The reserve status has been revoked, and they are currently going through the sale process. And the other 2 parcels, sections 1 and 2, now require a resolution to be requested to the Minister of Conservation, subject to the Reserves Act, requesting reserve status be removed so we can continue with the sale process. Yeah.
Thank you. Leslie.
Happy to move both the recommendations, Mr Chair.
So the recommendation, we received the report, and the recommendation to council, seconded. Tom, thank you. It's very clear. Any questions, councillors? Good job. I'll put that. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Run like the wind. The arts sector opportunities and working group update. Rex, welcome back.
Mr. I'll take it as read.
Yep.
And primarily provide the opportunity, I think, for the 4 elected members who are involved with the working group to add anything further to the report in terms of the work that we've undertaken collectively since the last update, which was in May of this year, which came to this committee as well. So just really happy to hand it over, and but yeah, I take any questions that might come out of the report with regards to any of the specifics in there as well. But
I'll come to the questions after I go around the councillors. Thanks for that suggestion, Rex. Councillor Boyle, any reflections?
What can I say? It's been an exciting process, and I'd have to acknowledge the work that Rex has done. Since you've come, you've moved it along, and you've been very responsive to whatever we feed back to you. We have really tried to engage as much of the art community as we could originally, and then we've gone down the track of looking at the opportunities and being led to some degree by Rex, or guided possibly. It's just been a very positive process, and I'm enjoying where we're at, and hopeful for what comes ahead.
Thank you. Leslie?
Thanks, Mr Chair. Look, this is really building on our earlier strategy work in the two reports that Rex has quoted from in this document. It's been a process of engaging with the arts community, getting more feedback. There's a lot of enthusiasm for a dedicated art gallery. There always was through the earlier reports as well. It has been a very worthwhile process, and I think we're making real progress on getting something that is right for this city and is going to vastly extend both the possibilities of displaying our various collections, but also giving opportunities for local artists to engage and be part of original works, having the possibility of further displays. So yeah, it's an exciting process, and I think we've made real progress on the whole community, arts community, feeling that there is a comfort level in what council is trying to achieve here.
Steve?
Yeah, look, I agree, but just wanted to acknowledge the great work that Rex is doing in the space, just around communication and momentum, but also just navigating the arts community and feeding that information back to us. So yeah, I appreciate it, Rex. Yeah, I guess I'm just excited about the excitement that we're seeing within the arts community, and a real sense of shared goals and shared visions. And themes in there that we can hopefully help facilitate and help lead to a really great result in the future. Just excited about the progress that we've already made at this point.
Alex?
Thank you, Mr Chair. Not really too much more to add other than my previous colleagues. I think it's really great that we're working so collaboratively with the community and providing some of those, or looking to provide some sort of opportunity for the community aspect of the arts as well. I think it's really important that we take them on the journey with us. That's the most critical piece there. Other than that, not really too much to add. I'm really happy with the progress, and thank Rex for his guidance.
And thank you, councillors, for your time on the project. Over to the committee now for questions or comments. So I've got Grant, then Mayor Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just questions, and I like the paper, Rex. Does it give, or will it, gives guiding principles a bit like that there with the museum that we can always hedge back to, as you know, around what, when we're making decisions, but equally around funding. But do you see that that's where we'll get to with this, or I don't take from we're at that point yet, but is that where we're heading to, that will give real good guidance to how we fund the arts sector in a really collaborative way that links back to the principles we've got for our art community?
Thank you, Mr Chair. Yeah, Councillor Dermody, I think the last three paragraphs under the next step section really provide us that assurance that actually we're working back from LTP 2027 work. So this is all going to lead into that, and it's going to lead in a structured and timely way with the relevant level of detail, which hopefully will give you as a council the assurance that operationally and organisationally this has got a long-term sustainable structure related to it. And I again commend elected members who I've been working with in this, is that they have provided me with the assurance that let's actually make sure we get the foundations right to actually, before we come back to this table even, let's get those foundations right that they're comfortable with, that we're comfortable with, that then can start to the next step and the next step and the next step. So that's really what the first 6 months of next year will do. But with that longer term view that it's a 2027 LTP conversation.
Thank you.
Mayor Clark.
Yeah, Rex, just some reflections. The document tends to talk an awful lot about...
Can you make sure the mic's in that way? Thanks.
Yep, the document talks, or your report talks a lot about a new build. And I wonder whether we've got enough focus on potential to take an existing building and fit out, first thing I'd say. When we had the previous ACI focus, that just continually got pushed further and further out, and my view of that was that it was due to finances and also due to us not understanding what the arts community actually wanted, because having an art gallery and having somewhere for the art community are two different things in my view, because art is more than just a gallery. It can be performing arts, it can be whole lots of things. And so one of the things we learnt by He Wakatuia was, while you can have a very small space, the operating costs can get away from you. So I guess that's part of the consideration as well about whether we put our energy into a big capex project or whether we hold back and spend more money on operational and get a much wider facility for people that might want to play music, do ballet, whatever. And most of the big cities I've looked at tend to have a central main gallery, and then promote pop-ups. They don't have one at the expense of the other. So I guess one of the questions, and this might be, if we were to provide a main gallery focus, how do we promote the pop-ups as well? Because they're quite unique. So, just those reflections. Thank you.
Alex.
To your point, Mayor Clark, as a committee we're really sensitive of that. The report may reference a new build in there, but we are absolutely canvassing all options. We are also as a committee really sensitive to the fact that we've just had a major culture, arts, heritage project, gone through a massive consultation around that, and it's yet to actually come to fruition. That's why it's really important to understand that what the future of the what we were previously calling the ACI, or a building for or space for the arts community, is actually so far in the future. And to Councillor Dermody's point, that by the time that we get there at that future point, we've got all of our funding ducks in a row. We know where the money's coming from. We know what OPEX looks like. We know what CAPEX looks like. We know where we're going. And we've got a wrap-around full project for you to consider at that point. So we really are looking at it from a long-term, future-focused process here, and taking all of that, community consultation fatigue around arts, culture and heritage as well into consideration while we're formulating it, if that helps.
Through you, Chair, just to comment back to that, and you're right, Alex, but we have pushed the art community out and out and out and out. And driven in part by the museum, because we split art away from the museum. Correct. So the museum should be finished in 18 months from now, and our next big project on the horizon has to be to sort something out in the art world.
That's why we're starting those conversations now,
yep.
So that the arts community does absolutely know that there is something coming, and that
yep.
they are completely involved in that process, so we don't get that far down the track,
yep.
and then spring something or that they feel like they haven't been involved or thought about when we consider arts, culture and heritage. So
sure.
That's where we're at.
Yep. Thanks,
Tom,
Chair.
then Trish.
One thing that's really impressed me actually is the extent to which this group has been able to work quietly in a very structured way. I don't know what they're doing, to be honest, but I trust them. But I would just suggest that if you cast it forward and I understand, look, we'll tell you when we made up our minds about things. I would suggest that you really need to gather political support before the election next year.
Yeah.
Can it go into the election next year with half the councillors having no idea which planned? Because it will be a topic that people will want to understand. So I think you need that political support. You want a council coming in that's behind it, rather than not knowing what it is.
Yep.
Through you, that point's been discussed, and it is on the chronological timeline that will fulfil your wish.
Trish, somebody got that on the record.
I'd like to say that along with this, the work Rex has done with the Te Unua, with Eloise, and with Hiwakatuia, has been amazing. The way they've restructured, he's managed to restructure the way it's managed, the way they've got more flexibility, and it's all been, it's helped bring the art community to understand that the council's with them. And Rex, the work you've done with them and with Eloise has been, it's really been pivotal to us getting all the collaboration that we've got. So that's where we're at.
So easy. That's a pain. Come his way.
It's good.
Good job, Rex.
Can someone go and let that person in,
Yeah,
please? Rex, just to give your back a break from all the pats that it's getting on the back of it.
One to press though.
Press the green button.
There you go.
Thanks. Oh, well, at least it wasn't Avon calling. Thank you, councillors, for the feedback, and to those who took part. There's a recommendation, the report's received. You moving that, Grant? Thank you. Seconded from somebody not on the committee. Ria, thank you. Put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you, Rex. Councillors, that brings us to the end of the public session of the meeting. For those that have joined us on the live stream, thank you very much. We'll be going into public excluded to receive the PX minutes of a variety of meetings, and doing that under section 7(2)(a), and the grounds for that under section 481.
Move that way.
Moved Leslie, seconded Grant. Put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you for joining on the live stream.